In the autumn of 1931, the United States was a nation in search of heroes. The Great Depression, then deepening in its third year, had hollowed out the American psyche. Amid catastrophic bank failures and unemployment, the public was not just seeking entertainment, they were seeking heroism, order, and a narrative of invincibility. In the world of sports, one team provided those things: the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Led by the most famous man in a generation of giants, Knute Rockne, Notre Dame had become a symbol of strength. They were the two-time defending national champions, riding a 19-game winning streak. Then on March 31st, 1931, the impossible happened. TWA Flight 599, carrying Rockne to Los Angeles, fell from the sky over a field near Bazaar, Kansas. The sport's greatest innovator and icon was dead. The event transcended sports. President Herbert Hoover declared it a national loss. Humorist Will Rogers captured the mood, noting the country mourned with a sorrow usually reserved for a president. Rockne's casket, carried by his own players, was laid to rest in a cemetery adjacent to the campus. In a tragic twist of fate, Rockne had been on his way to participate in the production of a film titled The Spirit of Notre Dame. That circumstance crystallized a new, impossible mandate for his team. It was no longer simply to win. It was to validate a legend and console a nation. The 1931 season was defined by a new narrative. Win one for Rockne. It was a profound motivator, but was also an unsustainable psychological burden. The man chosen to carry this burden was Hartley "Hunk" Anderson. Anderson was Notre Dame royalty, a star guard on Rockne's first undefeated teams, a man Rockne himself had called the greatest lineman he ever coached. But he was stepping into what was arguably the most difficult job in American sports history, being the guy after the guy. Anderson was a line tactician, not a charismatic mythmaker. He inherited Rockne's system, but not his aura. The team was no longer playing to achieve victory. They were playing under the crushing weight of not failing the memory of their departed demigod. For 7 games, this emotional high-wire act worked. The Irish, now riding a 26-game unbeaten streak, looked as invincible as ever until November 21st, when they faced the one man who was Rockne's equal. If Hunk Anderson was Rockne's protege, Howard Jones of USC was his peer. They called him the head man. He was an authoritarian who demanded perfection. He had built a West Coast dynasty known as the Thundering Herd. The rivalry itself was built on mutual respect. Rockne had, in fact, recommended Jones for the USC job. Crucially, Jones had studied and adapted one of Rockne's greatest tactical innovations, the shock troop system. Rockne had pioneered using a second-string unit to wear down an opponent before sending in his fresh starters for the kill. Jones, a master of fundamentals, adapted this concept, emphasizing superior depth as a weapon to achieve total exhaustion in an opponent. The two teams' paths to this showdown couldn't have been more different. Notre Dame arrived at 6-0-1, suffocating under the pressure of maintaining a perfect legacy. USC arrived at 7-1. Their season had begun with a shocking upset loss to St. Mary's, but that loss proved to be a strategic advantage. It shattered any complacency, removed all pressure, and allowed the Thundering Herd to rebuild itself into a hungry, focused machine. On November 21st, 1931, before a capacity crowd of 52,000 in Notre Dame Stadium, the script played out exactly as the grieving nation expected. For nearly 3 full quarters, the win one for Rockne mandate was being fulfilled. Late in the second quarter, Irish fullback Steve Bannis plunged over the goal line. At halftime, the score stood Notre Dame 7, USC 0. Then in the third quarter, Notre Dame delivered what appeared to be the decisive blow. They marched 63 yards, and star halfback Marchie Swartz punched it in for a second touchdown. The score was 14-0. As the Los Angeles Times later wrote, you wouldn't have given a plug nickel for Southern California's chances. The Dynasty, it seemed, would be willed to victory by the ghost of its departed coach. What followed was one of the most stunning reversals in sports history. Trailing 14-0, USC would score 16 unanswered points in the final stanza. This was not a miracle. It was a tactical and physical dismantling. The brittle invincibility Notre Dame had carried all season finally cracked. The primary cause was systematic fatigue. Howard Jones' thundering herd line, featuring 4 future Hall of Famers, had physically worn down the Notre Dame regulars. Hunk Anderson, lacking Rockne's faith in his own depth, was forced to stick with his exhausted starters. Jones, Rockne's friend, was using Rockne's own philosophy to destroy Rockne's dynasty. The comeback began. Early in the fourth, USC drove. Gus Shaver, who had returned from an earlier head injury, scored the Trojans' first touchdown. The extra point was good. Notre Dame 14, USC 7. The Trojans became relentless and drove again. A 32-yard pass interference penalty put them in scoring position. Shaver took a lateral and ran clear across to the opposite corner in a diving finish for his second touchdown. The score was now Notre Dame 14, USC 13. Then came the false climax. The moment the ghost of Rockne seemed to make its final stand, All-American guard Johnny Baker stepped up for the game-tying extra point, and in a moment of high drama, the kick was blocked. This should have been the end. USC had lost to Notre Dame by a single point in 1926, 1927, and 1929, often due to missed PATs. This blocked kick felt like history repeating itself, a cruel confirmation that USC was simply fated to lose to the Irish. But the 1931 Trojans were not playing against history. They were playing against a football team, and that team was exhausted. The Trojan defense, feeding off momentum, stiffened just at the right time. They smeared Marchie badly and forced a punt. USC got the ball back with 4 minutes to play. Shaver, the triple threat back, demonstrated his versatility, completing 2 critical passes for 73 yards. The Trojans stormed deep into Notre Dame territory. The clock wound down. 1 minute remaining. Johnny Baker lined up for a 33-yard field goal, a chance for redemption. Orv Mueller placed the hold. The Los Angeles Times described the scene. 55,000 stunned spectators rose en masse, as if in expectation of Baker's success. A low roar of admiration for the fighting Trojans filled the stadium. Baker's trusty right hoof propelled the ball through the uprights. The 26-game unbeaten streak was over. The spell was broken. Final score, USC 16, Notre Dame 14. At the final whistle, the 55,000 spectators at Notre Dame Stadium sat in stunned silence. The symbol of order and invincibility that a nation had clung to was gone. Coach Hunk Anderson, in a model of sportsmanship, said simply, "No excuses, no alibis. Southern Cal played the better game." But the psychological armor of win one for the Rockne wasn't just cracked, it was shattered. The proof came 1 week later. The Irish, seemingly shattered by the loss, traveled to play Army. The emotional well was dry. Notre Dame was shut out 12-0. A season that had begun with a 19-game unbeaten streak, fueled by the memory of a national icon, finished with a disappointing 6-2-1 record. The loss to USC came to define Hunk Anderson's tenure, which would end just 2 years later. With Notre Dame's dynasty ended, USC's was just being crowned. When the Trojans returned to Los Angeles, the city celebrated their ascension. A ticker-tape parade greeted the team at the train station, with more than 300,000 fans flooding the streets. It was a landmark event, a moment that catapulted USC into the same elite circle with Notre Dame, and served as the cornerstone for their back-to-back national championships in 1931 and 1932. The victory over Notre Dame had decided the 1931 national championship. USC would go on to win the 1932 Rose Bowl, securing their title. And in a final profound irony, the Dickinson system, then the most prominent selector of the national championship at that time, had renamed its grand prize following the coach's death. And so Howard Jones and the USC Trojans, by toppling Rockne's Dynasty, were formally awarded the national championship trophy, the Knute Rockne Intercollegiate Memorial Trophy. The spirit of Notre Dame was a powerful force, but on that November day, it was defeated by the cold, methodical, and superior execution of an opponent who proved that dynasties cannot be inherited. They must be earned. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to watch our series on the foundation of American football. Go to our website and click on the timeline feature and select How Football Began. You'll learn how American football evolved from its earliest deadly form to the more modern form we love today.